The night I nearly lost my newborn and myself, Samantha was posting sun-drenched beach photos online, smiling as if the world owed her a break. Meanwhile, I was trapped in a sterile hospital room, my body aching from complications, cradling my fragile baby alone. That moment sharpened a truth I've long tried to ignore. I'm the invisible anchor in my family, holding everything together, and Samantha, she's the storm on the horizon, always circling, waiting to stir up trouble. I'm Lydia Wilkinson. I'm 40, a registered nurse specializing in maternal fetal medicine and the one everyone depends on without saying it aloud. People see me as the responsible one, the quiet backbone who manages disasters without complaint, but rarely do they thank me or even notice. This family, this tangled web of love and rivalry, has shaped me. But lately, I wonder if my own endurance is just feeding their entitlement. I own the title to our family home, a secret power I keep close, a silent safeguard I've never had to wield. For now, I'm still holding on to hope that loyalty and love will outlast bitterness and jealousy. But that night at the hospital, as Samantha's laughter echoed from her phone screen, something inside me cracked. From the earliest days, it was clear Samantha was the favored child, though no one said it openly. I remember Christmases filled with a bittersweet ache, like the time I was 12 and unwrapped a plain sweater while Samantha was showered with extravagant gifts. My parents never reprimanded her, only smiled indulgently as she paraded her new toys. Samantha was always praised for her outgoing charm, the center of attention in every room, while I was the quiet achiever expected to stay unnoticed. My mother, Margaret, would brush off my hurt feelings with, "That's just Samantha's way. She means well," as if that made it okay. I swallowed the sting, convincing myself it was tough love, or that Samantha needed more care because she was somehow more fragile. But the sharpest cut came on my 18th birthday, when I had secretly planned a surprise party, only for Samantha to swoop in, take credit, and bask in the applause. Everyone clapped for her, not me. That moment planted a seed of doubt deep inside, a whisper questioning whether being the good girl was ever truly enough, or if it was simply a role I was expected to play without reward. Sacrifice became my language, my currency. I paid the mortgage on our family home out of my own paycheck for 5 long years, won $200 every month, so we wouldn't lose it. I gave up vacations, delayed pursuing a promotion, and dropped everything to handle emergencies, all without complaint. But gratitude was rare, especially from Samantha. She expected me to be there whenever she called, financially, emotionally, without once considering what it cost me. My husband Daniel worries I'm being taken advantage of. He's seen how Samantha belittles me behind my back, how she manipulates family dynamics to her favor. Yet I cling to hope that my love and sacrifices will one day be recognized. Meanwhile, I keep the house deed in my name, a quiet power no one else knows about, a line I haven't crossed because I still believe the family bond can heal. Around me, the key players are clear. Samantha, the jealous cousin. Daniel, my steady support. My sister Lisa, caught in the middle. And my mother Margaret, whose favoritism fans the flames. The battlefield is set, but for now, I'm still the one carrying the weight. The first time Samantha humiliated me in front of everyone, it was at my niece's birthday party, an event meant to celebrate, but it became a stage for her cruelty. She leaned over, loud enough for half the room to hear, and sneered, "Maybe if Lydia wasn't so fragile, she wouldn't need everyone to babysit her." The air snapped tight with silence. Daniel's glare could have cut glass, but most family members pretended not to hear, some chuckling nervously to fill the void. My chest tightened, humiliation blooming like a dark flower inside me. I wanted to snap back, to defend myself, but instead I swallowed the insult and quietly excused myself to the kitchen. For the first time in years, I refused the offered slice of birthday cake, an act so small it barely registered, yet it felt like the first flicker of rebellion. I kept telling myself, "She's just stressed. She didn't mean it," clinging to the hope that love could still prevail. But that moment planted a flicker of doubt, a quiet question if maybe, just maybe, I needed to stop playing the part of the unbreakable caretaker and start protecting myself. The moment I showed even the slightest resistance, Samantha pounced like a predator sensing weakness. It started subtly. Whispers slipped into corners, hushed voices that died the second I walked into the room. I caught Margaret glancing at Daniel, her expression a mix of pity and doubt. "Maybe Lydia's just being too sensitive," she murmured once, as if those words could dissolve the mounting tension. The flying monkeys arrived next, cousins, in-laws, even close family friends who'd once been neutral. They cornered me at dinners, in hallways, insisting I lighten up, or accusing me of making everything about my health. Each encounter felt like a jab beneath the ribs, stealing the breath from my lungs. I questioned myself late at night, staring at my reflection, wondering if I was truly the problem. Was I really overreacting? It was a relentless, invisible war waged through smiles and sideways glances, a gaslight so intense it threatened to crack my fragile grip on reality. But beneath it all, I clung to a flicker of defiance. I wouldn't let Samantha's venom silence me entirely. Not yet. The strain of this quiet battle made me desperate for a truce, so I asked Lisa to mediate a family meeting. I wanted calm. I wanted understanding, maybe even a chance to clear the air before it poisoned us all. I spoke carefully, recounting my sacrifices, the toll on my health, and the unfairness of Samantha's attacks. My voice trembled only slightly, but Samantha's response hit like a slap. Tears welled in her eyes, her voice trembling as she painted herself the victim, crushed under pressure from everyone's expectations. She accused me of trying to ruin her reputation, wielding her charm like a shield. Lisa and Margaret exchanged glances, then subtly sided with Samantha, dismissing my concerns as exaggerations, my pain as drama. I watched their faces, searching for a hint of empathy, but found only cold dismissal. Walking away from that meeting, my heart felt heavier than ever. I realized then that my family's support was fragile, a facade easily shattered by Samantha's manipulation. I wasn't the villain here, but no one seemed willing to see the truth. The real humiliation came crashing down later that month at a company fundraiser where Daniel and I had brought family along. I'd hoped for some semblance of normalcy, but Samantha had other plans. With a cruel smile, she leaned in front of colleagues and friends, her voice dripping with false concern. "Lydia's health issues make her such a burden. Honestly, how can she be trusted with family responsibilities if she's so fragile?" The laughter that followed was like a fist to my gut. I felt every eye on me, the sting of their judgment burning through my skin. Daniel squeezed my hand tightly, his silent support the only anchor in that storm of shame. It wasn't just a personal attack. It threatened my professional reputation, the very foundation I'd built my career on. Samantha weaponized my vulnerability, turning it into ammunition for her social climb. The calculated cruelty hit me hard, and in that moment, I understood. This was no petty jealousy. This was a war, and she had no intention of playing fair. Even with all the damage she'd done, I made one last, fragile attempt at reconciliation. Samantha had mentioned a personal crisis in passing, and despite everything, I offered help, my voice steady but soft. "I want us to move forward, but I need honesty and respect. That's the only way this works." For a heartbeat, I thought she might surprise me. Instead, she laughed, cold, sharp, dismissive. "Thanks, but no thanks," she said, words slicing through my offer like a blade. Then, in front of a small gathering, she mocked my gesture, turning my vulnerability into fuel for her amusement. The sting of her rejection was a collapse, a shattering of hope I hadn't fully admitted I'd held on to. I realized then, with a hollow ache, that I had done everything I could. The door to peace had slammed shut, and Samantha was standing on the other side, smiling in triumph. In the quiet aftermath, I felt the weight of that final rebuff settle deep inside me, a wound that no amount of sacrifice or love seemed able to heal. The fallout was more brutal than I could have imagined. Samantha's words cut deeper than ever, and this time, she made sure the whole family could hear her twisted version of events. At the last dinner gathering, she cornered me by the table, her voice dripping with false sympathy and a cruel smile. Maybe if Lydia wasn't so fragile, she'd stop dragging everyone down. The room fell silent, eyes darting between us. I caught the flicker of doubt in some family members' faces, doubt I had never invited. The whispered conversations multiplied after that night, and soon, more relatives quietly turned against me, swallowing Samantha's poison without question. Their cold stares and clipped greetings stabbed me in the chest. I felt like a ghost in the home I'd worked so hard to keep safe. Daniel's presence was the only light in the growing darkness. He stood by me quietly but firmly, his hand clutching mine when I thought I might crumble. "You're not alone," he whispered one night, his voice low against the hum of our empty living room. But even his steadiness couldn't chase away the creeping self-doubt. Was I really the problem? Was my kindness mistaken for weakness? The question clawed at me relentlessly in the long, sleepless hours. I caught my reflection in the mirror, eyes red from crying, lips pressed thin in exhaustion, and wondered if I was losing myself to this invisible war. The isolation wrapped around me like a suffocating shroud, cold and unforgiving. I retreated into silence, avoiding calls and messages from anyone but Daniel. The warmth of family gatherings turned to ice under Samantha's shadow. I felt their judgment like a weight pressing against my chest, making every breath a struggle. The house, once my sanctuary, now echoed with emptiness and betrayal. Yet, beneath the fatigue and despair, a faint ember glowed, small, fragile, but unyielding. I couldn't pretend anymore, couldn't ignore the truth that gnawed at my heart. This battle was far from over, and if I wanted to survive it, I needed to stop sacrificing and start protecting. A flicker of resolve sparked quietly inside me, ready to grow. But that flicker was fragile, easily buried beneath the relentless tide of loneliness. I clung to Daniel's words, "You're not alone," like a lifeline, even as the world around me seemed to crumble. The sense of betrayal was so deep, it felt like my bones would break beneath the weight. And yet, the pain was sharpening something new inside me, a cold clarity waiting to harden into steel. I didn't know how or when, but I knew this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of a new, harder chapter. 3 days after the harrowing ordeal with my newborn, I woke to a new nightmare. The family home, the one I had poured my life into, the place etched with memories and silent sacrifices, was no longer mine to enter. Samantha had changed the locks. I stood outside the front door, the early morning chill biting at my skin. Fists clenched so tightly my nails bit into my palms. The deed was in my name, yes, but she had exploited some legal loophole, manipulating documents and signatures with precision. My phone was gone too. Taken without warning, my calls and texts ignored or blocked. When Daniel confronted her, she smirked with that venomous charm only she possessed. "She's on her own now," she said, voice laced with triumph. My heart shattered in that moment, the final thread of hope snapping free. Lisa and Margaret were there, silent witnesses to this cold betrayal. Their eyes looked away, unwilling to meet mine. Not a word, not a hint of protest. It was as if they too had turned their backs. The street was eerily quiet, save for the distant hum of cars and the faint rustle of leaves. The sun rose higher, warmth failing to reach the cold knot settling inside my chest. I stood there, frozen, fingers brushing the icy handle I could no longer grasp. The familiar scent of the house, oak wood, old books, faint traces of lavender, was locked behind a barrier I couldn't cross. Everything I had fought for was stolen in one ruthless stroke, and the family who should have protected me was nowhere to be found. That day, something inside me fractured irreversibly. The part of me that believed in loyalty, in family, in gentle forgiveness, it all crumbled like dry earth. A dark void replaced hope, but in its place, a cold, clear clarity emerged. This family was no longer a refuge. It was a battlefield, and I had to be the one to take control. The warmth of betrayal burned through my veins, awakening a resolve I hadn't known I possessed. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a force waiting to be unleashed. The silence around me echoed not with sorrow, but with the gathering storm of my own determination. Alone in the quiet of my home, my real home, thanks to that stubborn legal deed, I sat with the weight of years pressing down on me. I replayed every moment of sacrifice, every sleepless night, every betrayal disguised as a joke or a careless word. The pain was raw, but beneath it, a sharp, simmering anger began to rise. Not the frantic, uncontrolled kind, but a cold, precise fury that cut through the fog of sadness. Samantha's jealousy was a poison I had too long allowed to seep into my life, a venom I'd tried to ignore in the name of family. Now, I saw it clearly. Her need to control, to dominate, to belittle. It was the sickness, not me. I traced my finger along the edge of the house deed, feeling the smooth paper beneath my skin. That piece of paper was more than ownership. It was power. Power Samantha underestimated. Power I had barely dared to acknowledge. The realization settled like iron in my chest. I had the means to protect myself, to draw boundaries she could not cross. Never again, I whispered into the stillness, the words a promise etched in resolve. I wasn't crying anymore. The tears had dried into resolve. The grief still lingered, a shadow at the edges of my mind, but it no longer ruled me. Instead, I was planning, strategizing quietly, like a general preparing for battle. The transformation had begun. I was no longer the passive caretaker, the invisible victim. I was becoming something else, deliberate, powerful, unstoppable. Daniel and I sat late into the night, the house filled with the soft hum of the heater and the occasional creak of settling wood. His eyes were tired but steady, reflecting the weight I carried. "We can't let this keep happening," I said quietly, voice firm despite the exhaustion. "I'm done trying to convince her or the rest of the family. They're all part of this, in one way or another." Daniel nodded, reaching across the table to grip my hand. "We'll face this together. For you. For us." His support was the anchor I needed, grounding me as the storm inside me roared. I laid out the plan I'd been shaping in the quiet hours, cutting off communication, enforcing boundaries, withdrawing support slowly but surely. Samantha needed to face consequences she'd never imagined, and the family dynamic had to shift to reflect reality, not illusions. We decided to start small, gathering evidence quietly, documenting every manipulation, every lie. "This isn't just about her," I said, voice low but resolute. "It's about reclaiming my life, and maybe even healing what's left of this fractured family." Daniel squeezed my hand, a silent promise that he believed in the fight ahead. The transformation was no longer a distant idea. It had begun, right here in the late-night shadows of my kitchen, with whispered plans and steady resolve. I was no longer vulnerable. I was deliberate. I was strategic. And as dawn crept through the curtains, casting pale light across the table, I knew this was just the beginning of a new path, one where I would no longer be silenced or erased. This was my moment to act. I sat at the kitchen table, scattered papers and my laptop open before me, the quiet hum of the night pressing against my thoughts. The list I was making felt endless. Mortgage payments I'd quietly shouldered, medical appointments I'd arranged, family events I'd planned, emotional support I'd provided like an invisible thread holding everyone together. Each item pulled at me, the weight of years of responsibility I'd carried without complaint or recognition. I traced my finger over the bank statements, receipts, and contracts, documenting every dollar I had contributed, every call I had made on behalf of others. It was a ledger of both sacrifice and silent control. I reached out to a family lawyer, someone Daniel recommended, hoping to confirm the legal ground beneath my feet. The consultation was clinical, but empowering. The lawyer explained the extent of my ownership of the family home and the legal tools available to me, restraining orders, financial injunctions, and the ability to enforce boundaries that Samantha had flagrantly disregarded. I felt a flicker of hope amid the exhaustion. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting. I was preparing to act. The law was a shield, and potentially, a sword. But the most unsettling discovery came when I sifted through some documents Samantha had left carelessly unattended. There, buried in plain sight, was evidence that she had been secretly borrowing money from relatives and maxing out credit cards to fund a lifestyle built on lies. None of this had been shared, not a whisper to anyone in the family. The realization stung like ice. Samantha's world wasn't as stable as she portrayed. I could sense her desperation now, a vulnerability I hadn't noticed before. This hidden weakness was a pressure point I hadn't seen but could use. My chest tightened with grim satisfaction. They needed me more than I needed them. That night, as I closed my notebook, I whispered to the empty room, "You thought you had all the power, didn't you?" The words felt brittle, but true. The mask was slipping. Samantha's control was a fragile illusion, and I was beginning to see the cracks. I allowed myself a brief moment of quiet triumph, but beneath it was a steady resolve. This was only the beginning of reclaiming what was mine. The following days were a study in quiet preparation. I changed all the passwords, bank accounts, emails, even the smart lock codes for the house. Every access point I controlled was locked down tighter than before. Legal documents were updated, copies safely stashed in a locked drawer. Despite the chaos inside, I maintained an unshakable calm. At family events, I showed up with a polite smile, nodding and engaging just enough to keep suspicions at bay. The facade was necessary. No one could guess the storm simmering beneath my measured demeanor. Daniel was invaluable in this phase. He helped manage our communications, screening calls and texts, so I wasn't overwhelmed by unnecessary distractions or provocations. His steady presence was a balm, the anchor I clung to when the tension tightened around me like a vice. Inside, I felt like a time bomb, each quiet moment ticking closer to an inevitable explosion. But outside, I was the picture of composure. The family continued to treat me as the fragile woman they thought they knew, unaware that I was quietly mapping out every vulnerability, every opportunity. This was the calm before the storm, a deceptive silence that masked the grinding gears of retribution turning steadily in my mind. One evening, as I reviewed some financial statements again, a new, unexpected detail stopped me cold. Samantha's debt was far worse than I'd imagined. Over $150,000 in unpaid loans and defaulted credit cards. The numbers were staggering, but what cut deeper was a paper trail of lies she'd spun to cover it all. Messages to family members revealed fabricated stories, desperate pleas for sympathy disguised as casual conversations. This wasn't just reckless spending. This was a carefully maintained web of deceit, dragging anyone who believed her down with her. The betrayal felt suffocating. I stared at the pages, heart pounding, a mixture of shock and grim vindication flooding me. This explained everything. Her erratic behavior, the constant need for money, the way she'd viciously attacked me to distract from her own failings. The discovery wasn't just vindicating. It added an urgency I hadn't felt before. If Samantha's financial house collapsed, it wouldn't be just her reputation on the line. It would drag the entire family into ruin. My moral position was now indisputable, and my resolve hardened like steel forged in fire. The veil lifted completely, and I saw her, not as the charming cousin, but as the manipulative force trying to pull us all under. That night, I confided in Daniel, voice low but fierce. "This changes everything. She's not just hurting me, she's sinking us all." He nodded, eyes grave but resolute. Then it's time she faced the consequences. The weight of that truth settled between us like a promise. The moment to act had arrived. I began withdrawing all financial and emotional support with deliberate care. Mortgage payments stopped immediately, but I didn't just vanish. I sent formal legal notices to family members, carefully explaining why the support was ending. I detailed Samantha's actions and the impact they had on the family's stability, framing it as a necessary boundary rather than punishment. The letters were cold but precise, a message laced with finality. Samantha's calls came in waves, desperate and angry, but I didn't answer. Texts were blocked silently, each ignored message a small rebellion. The family noticed the sudden shift, the growing tension and unexplained problems, but no one connected the dots. The atmosphere thickened with unspoken questions and fractured loyalties. Samantha faced the first real consequences: missed payments, mounting pressure from lenders, and the isolating sting of being cut off. I watched from a distance, composed but unyielding as the first dominoes began to fall. Throughout it all, Daniel was my rock. His quiet support steadied me when doubt crept in. reminding me that this was about more than retribution. It was about survival and reclaiming dignity. The moves I made were subtle, almost surgical, but their impact was undeniable. The family's fragile illusion was cracking, and Samantha was beginning to feel the cold weight of isolation. This was the opening salvo in a battle I was determined to win, not with shouting or spectacle, but with quiet, relentless resolve. The stage was set for what was to come. The day of the family gathering arrived like the calm before a storm, quiet, deceptively ordinary. I arrived early, my hands steady despite the weight of the evidence tucked in my folder. Samantha was there, radiant as always, a practiced smile masking whatever doubt flickered beneath. Lisa and Margaret hovered nearby, exchanging glances that felt heavy with unspoken tension. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool air brush my skin, the faint scent of jasmine from the garden mingling with the stale warmth of the living room. This was it, the moment I stopped hiding. When Samantha began her usual chatter, I interrupted softly but firmly. I need everyone's attention. The room stilled. Even the clink of the teacups paused. I laid out everything. The financial documents, texts, bank statements showing her deception, and the callous silence during my medical crisis. My voice didn't waver. I protected this family quietly for years, but it's time you face the truth. The shock hit her face like a cold splash of water. Her confident mask cracked, eyes darting as the room shifted. Some stunned, others quietly supportive. I drew the line clearly. No more bailouts. No more lies. Immediate repayment plans start now. It was more than words. It was a declaration. The air thickened with the weight of unspoken history, the room charged with a silent reckoning. I could see the flickers of embarrassment on some relatives, the discomfort of facing a truth long denied. I stood there, calm and commanding. The power finally shifted. The golden girl was no longer invisible. The family's attention was mine, and I held it with quiet strength. Samantha sank into her chair, her smile gone, replaced by a tremor of uncertainty. The gathering felt like a threshold crossing. There was no going back to the old ways. I caught Lisa's eye briefly, a fleeting nod, cautious but real. Margaret looked away, lips pressed thin, but the balance had changed. I sensed the family fracturing, old alliances crumbling under the weight of truth. And in that charged silence, I found my own voice again, fierce but controlled, a beacon of the justice I'd fought so long to claim. After the storm of revelation settled, the days that followed were a slow unraveling of Samantha's carefully constructed world. Creditors began calling in, their voices sharp and unyielding on the phone. Family members who once turned a blind eye now demanded answers. Samantha's confident facade faltered under the weight of mounting pressure. I watched from a distance as her social standing slipped, the whispers of doubt growing louder with every missed payment and half-hearted apology. Her desperation came in the form of frantic calls and texts to Daniel and me, begging for forgiveness, promising change. But the calm resolve I'd nurtured held firm. One afternoon, she appeared unannounced at our doorstep, eyes rimmed with tears, voice trembling as she pleaded, "Please, Lydia, I'm sorry. Let's talk." I felt the old pull, the instinct to soothe, to fix. But Daniel's steady grip on my arm reminded me of the boundaries we'd set. "I'm sorry, Samantha. This isn't about forgiveness right now. It's about accountability." I closed the door softly but resolutely. The familiar scent of rain on concrete mingled with the tension lingering in the air, a tangible reminder that I was no longer the same woman who would silently endure. Others in the family shifted too. Those who had stood by Samantha began to question her version of events, their voices cautious but growing in strength. The network of support she'd relied on started to fray, cracks deepening with every whispered conversation. Samantha's world was contracting, shrinking under the weight of consequences she could no longer evade. I watched it all unfold without glee or malice, only a firm sense of justice, a quiet satisfaction that the reckoning was real and deserved. The fallout was painful, but necessary. It was the cost of deceit, and I was ready to see it through. Despite her growing isolation, Samantha didn't stop trying. Her tactics escalated, threats of legal action, public victimhood, and the desperate deployment of family tradition as a shield. She called old relatives, waving faded photographs like proof of loyalty and shared history, trying to sway hearts and minds. But I was prepared. Legal counsel stood ready and my emotional armor was impenetrable. Every attempt to manipulate me bounced harmlessly off the boundaries I'd fortified. The memories she weaponized didn't sway me. They only underscored the betrayal. "I'm not the one hiding behind lies, Samantha," I told her once, voice cold yet steady. Some family members reached out privately, their apologies soft but sincere. "I'm sorry, Lydia. I didn't see what was happening," one whispered over the phone. These moments were bittersweet, a reminder of how deeply Samantha's web had ensnared them. Yet despite their regrets, my resolve remained unbroken. Samantha's influence waned visibly, the once charismatic figure now a shadow at family events, her isolation palpable. The power she craved slipped through her fingers like sand. Watching her retreat was a quiet victory, a testament to the strength born from silence and pain. 6 months later, the world felt different, quieter, but steadier. Daniel and I fortified our small circle, focusing on our immediate family and the life we were rebuilding with intention. I attended family gatherings selectively now, communicating only when respect was assured. The house, once a battleground, had transformed into a sanctuary of autonomy. Its walls held no shadows of betrayal, only the steady heartbeat of a woman reclaiming her peace. Samantha remained distant, a consequence of her own making, untethered from the support she once used to wield control. Lisa began to bridge the chasm cautiously, her tentative gestures signaling a fragile trust. The dynamics had shifted irreversibly, but there was room for healing, not because of forgiveness granted lightly, but because boundaries had created space for honesty. I learned that peace wasn't born from approval or family approval, but from respect and self-protection. The future felt open, a blank page folded with quiet hope. I didn't miss the chaos of the past. Its toxicity had been poisonous. Now, I was in control, grounded in the hard-won calm that only those who endure can truly know. The storm had passed, and in its wake, I stood tall,